Perhaps you've heard it's improvement week for Ohio State, and if you haven't, we're going to talk all about it. It is the off week. Ryan Day and Jim Knowles talking in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on a Tuesday afternoon. These are Snap Judgments. It's Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. What's the number one goal of improvement week, Bill?
I think for the team as a whole, it's like maintaining the edge, right, that they played with on Saturday, which was about as much edge as I've seen this team play with probably in a year or two. They were really getting after it. So it's that. I actually kind of liked most what Jim Knowles said when Berm asked him about it, which was like fundamentals for the team, yes, but also taking a look at what they've done defensively from a schematic standpoint in the first 2 weeks and then anticipating how the better teams are going to play down the road or going to try to attack that. Because you can see stuff. Every defense has a weakness, right? And if you watch these first 2 games, there are things where you can say to yourself, boy, if they just threw the ball there, that could have been a bad time. But they're playing Akron and Western Michigan, so it's probably not going to happen. But it's the things you worry about when you play in Oregon or you play in Nebraska or Penn State or Michigan, obviously. So I'm glad that the coaching staff has an opportunity now to kind of process all of the information they've gained over the last 2 weeks and then think about how that's going to be applied when the stakes are the highest.
I'm interested in the idea, what Ryan Day said is that every player is going to get a thing or two they need to improve on. And I would like to wish we could see like one for instance of, for example, this player needs to do this. We didn't really get that, but you can tell, and Ryan Day, for as relaxed as he appears, he does not appear to be in like a jovial mood. Like he's very focused. Like this group is dialed in even with the off week, and they'll get out on the road and do recruiting on Friday and Saturday this week, but they're still focused on practice today. They're still worried about, making sure that every single step that they take is not being, it's a step that's leading you somewhere, which can be a bit of a challenge when you come to an off week after a 56-0 win where you give up less than 100 points. So that's really the takeaway for me. Like they seem
Stop saying 100 points.
100. They gave up less than 100 yards.
They gave up 99 points in your question.
Did I?
Yeah.
They gave up less than 100 points.
They did.
Am I wrong?
No, it's
Am
correct.
I wrong,
It's actually correct.
Yeah. So they also gave up less than 100 yards, which is pretty good also. Yeah. So give or take, it's hard to keep that focus, and that again, this is the recurring theme we're going to have all year long. Like these guys are so veteran on this team that it's probably much easier for this group to do it than it would be a different Ryan Day team.
Yeah. And I wondered, so Ohio State will practice later today, Tuesday. They will practice Wednesday and Thursday, and then they're going to be off Friday and Saturday. I wondered if Ryan Day might have tweaked that because it's coming so early in the year, like maybe do something on a Saturday, a mock game, something to get the younger players more reps. But I don't feel like they have to do that. And again, that's part of what Burnham is talking about with having so many veterans back here. Like they can take a big picture look at 16 games and saving 2 or 3 days of wear and tear because they have so much built-up body of work. I think that's the rare benefit. Otherwise, you'd maybe hear Ryan Day be like, this really sucks. I don't want the schedule set up this way, but I think that they're going to manage it just fine, and it wouldn't do any good to complain anyway.
It kind of sounds like they're going to let the young guys get after it this week. That's kind of what I picked up on. Like the more veteran players will do their things. They'll get their coaching points and their fundamentals that they need to work on, but I think maybe some of the most physical stuff that happens over the next 3 days will be a lot of freshmen and sophomores and guys.
You're a young guy, buckle up.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun week for those guys.
Get your bell rung a few times this week.
But they're already playing a bunch of those guys. Ryan Day was, I think, pretty proud of the fact that they had 80 players participate, or at least 80, in the win over Western Michigan on Saturday. So they've already been managing, I think, this quote-unquote exhibition slate. I know that you can't take anything for granted in college football. Lots of teams have overlooked MAC opponents and paid the price for that.
What? Who?
I don't know. Just somebody out there surely has at some point.
What we're saying is it's possible.
It's possible.
Yeah.
And I do think that is worth mentioning. It seems like it's been in vogue with people making playoff brackets and doing re-ranks after every 2 games and polls like, oh, well, Ohio State only beat Akron and Western Michigan. Yeah, that's true. Their strength of schedule doesn't match up with Texas right now, but ask Notre Dame what it's like to overlook some of these opponents, or Penn State going into the fourth quarter. Like the fact that Ohio State has won these 2 games by a combined 108-6, and you want to discount the competition, I'm not sure that that's entirely fair.
Yeah, you're not competing against Texas for a playoff spot, so who cares? Like, I mean, so it doesn't matter. Like, you're competing against, if Ohio State wins all their games, they're going to be in the playoff. So it doesn't matter. And if maybe they'll be number 1 or maybe they'll be number 2. At this point, it really doesn't matter. So anyone who's talking about that is stupid.
Well, I shouldn't.
If it's you, stop it.
I
know who I'm talking about.
I wasn't trying to put it in context of like Ohio State should be ranked this or that or the other. I just think the way that they played the first 2 games and the seriousness with which they've taken.
Of course, but you'd rather be 106 to 108 to 6 over the first 2 weeks than 1-1 with a loss to Northern Illinois, right? So
wait, who lost to Northern Illinois?
Notre Dame did.
Oh.
You'd rather be in that situation and then focusing on how do we still get better and trying to sharpen the edge as opposed to having to come into the next week going, holy crap, what did we just do? Mm-hmm. So, I think that Ohio State's just going to run it out there no matter what and say, this is the hand we're dealt. We're getting this week off. Let's make it count. And so that's really where I wanted to ask Rondé, like, where does it come from? He didn't really answer that. I think maybe it's just common sense.
From his old noodle.
Maybe it's just common sense. Like, we're going to use this time to get better. I would imagine the interesting conversation is how will this off week look compared to the October 13th through 20th off week? Like, how much different?
Probably depends on what happens on the
12th. Right. How much different will they approach? How much different will they approach that one if they're still undefeated? So that's something I guess I'm curious about. But for today, we heard Rondé talk a lot about Seth McLaughlin. Very glowing review. And a ton of Ty Hamilton discussion today as he was, the Ohio State's Defensive Player of the Week. It seems like every week now we're going to talk about different subsections of this team. Like last week it was the don't forget me guys. This week it's the hey, I'm new here, but I just kicked ass guy. Like, and now it's like, oh, don't forget this 6-year guy whose family's been in this building now for 10 years. And he's still pretty darn good.
Silver bullet of the day.
5th-year guy, he's not a 6-year guy.
The plays that he made at the start of the first quarter and the start of the second quarter, he didn't have to take on a ton of work, Ty Hamilton, but there have been times which people have been critical of Ty Hamilton or they haven't seen it, and we get questions about that on subtext a lot. It's like Ty Hamilton, and I think the quote-unquote criticism was like, well, he's just got they know what his floor is, and he's reliable, and he's healthy, and he's out there. I'm like, well, yeah, that's a pretty big deal all by itself, and Ohio State trusts him to do all those responsibilities. And I think he's continuing year after year, and especially you look at Saturday, he is pushing the line of scrimmage back. He is making more tackles for loss. He was already doing things that made him a trustworthy and regular part of the rotation for Ohio State. But I don't know that he's getting enough credit for how much game wrecking he can actually do. Jim Knowles went pretty in depth on that on Tuesday.
The guy got hurt on the play, so I don't want to I'm not trying to make light of a guy getting injured. I've never seen a defensive lineman throw an offensive lineman as far into the backfield as Ty Hamilton did on the very first play of the game against Western Michigan. I don't care if it's a MAC player or not.
That's an all-MAC player.
I'd be impressed. Yeah, he was a very good center. Yeah, he could have done it to a high school player. I would have been impressed. Like, that was kind of crazy. I'm perfectly fine with high floor and reliable being the way to describe a guy on my football team. I'll take as many of those as you can get. But I do think Ty's also elevated his game, and he's done it year after year after year, right? He's always been what Ryan Day described him as reliable and accountable, and you sort of know what you're going to get. But there's something else there, I think, this year. And I don't know if that's maturity. I don't know if it's just something in the Hamilton blood that makes you turn into a monster in your 5th year, like we've seen in the past. But I think he's going to continue to surprise people, and I think he will, by the end of this year, be something more than just a reliable guy. Was it Ryan Day or Jim Knowles said all conference kind of player? I think that's on the table for him.
He's done exactly what his brother did here at Ohio State.
But he started
earlier. I think he was ahead of Devon.
Yeah. You got to remember when Ty got recruited, people are like, why are you? And we're just taking him because he's Devon's brother. But now you look at him physically, and you're like, holy moly, that dude's terrifying. And again, to Bill, I was just going to say the same thing. I don't care if someone's a low ceiling or a high ceiling, great. Or if they're a high ceiling, great. Yeah. If they're a high floor, that's also great. Yeah. As long as there's a stable floor, which is what he is, then that's what matters. And Ty has certainly proven it. I mean, he's played a major part of this defense this is his 3rd year of playing a major role in the defense. So just that alone makes him unique at Ohio State, because you don't often get a guy who's a starter for 3 years, essentially.
And I don't have any problem with taking Devon Hamilton's brother from down the road and knowing.
Oh, do they have another one?
It seems like that was a pretty smart strategy. Down the road, understands what was going to be required in the program. Had spent plenty of time certainly learning from his brother and understanding what Larry Johnson wanted to do. And like, I don't know that he's got enough credit previously.
Isn't that his fault for not being more talkative?
I don't think so.
Can't we blame him?
I
don't want to blame us, is what I'm saying.
No.
I don't want to say that we haven't paid attention to him enough.
I talk about
I talk about Ty Hamilton
put this
a
blame
lot.
squarely on Ty for not being enough of a showboat and not being enough of a look at me guy.
Okay.
It's his fault.
He needs a little shimmy or something.
He
after
needs
gets
a he
to
needs a
TFL.
shimmy shack.
Well, so he and Ty Leak, maybe the TV.
What if one
cameras
guy's doing
aren't
this?
getting it. They have
Then the
they have
guy
a
blows up.
TNT explosive handshake they've been doing.
Oh, I didn't see
So
that
it's
on
probably
TV.
not
Okay.
getting a lot of. Maybe we'll.
I know.
We'll film it, but I don't know.
I know Ty's father watches the show. So here's the idea. One of them is like the cartoons. It's the fake TNT thing. You
Burn.
pump
They
it up.
already have a handshake.
It's still, you got an off week for a reason.
They don't need a second handshake.
This is the kind of
It's improvement
Yeah, we're
week.
We're improving.
And we're improving the
handshake.
celebration.
The celebration is good. They have it. It's explosive. Even it's just not getting on television. Maybe that's your fault. Ty's fault. He's
That's
not begging
what
for
I'm
attention.
saying.
Okay, but they don't need a second handshake.
No, this isn't a handshake. This is a different celebration. You do the handshake and then you do the explosion. One guy, and it's like, the wire and it's at the end. That. So one guy's
like
doing this
TNT.
and then the other guy's running away and then he blows up and he falls backwards.
Why do you
All
keep
right.
doing it like a jackhammer? Like
No,
you're
it's,
trying.
you know what I'm talking about.
But you only do
it's
it
a punch.
once.
You keep doing it like 5 times.
Well, yeah, but you're trying to get people's attention, folks. Okay, you do it once, people aren't going to
Well,
see
if
it.
you have to do more methodical, you push
Yeah.
the plunger down.
Fine. We're all working things out here. Is the point. This is a
Improvement week for Ohio
Improvement
State. Regression week for snap judgments.
Arvell Reese is good, turns out.
okay.
Everyone else is seeing it. You guys both specifically, or Bill, you specifically went into the CJ Hicks discussion. Did you get what you wanted?
No, kind of. We don't need to have like another conversation, I guess, about the dynamics of how you get a guy like CJ Hicks to move from linebacker. I just asked if they've thought about it, and Ryan Day did say like yes, but they don't want to move him from linebacker just yet. They want him to keep growing there. So we'll see. Like I guess I found that mildly encouraging that they're at least thinking about it. And Jim Knowles said like I've always thought about it. And I said, well, why don't you do it? And he said, because we're good at defensive end right now. It's like I guess it's a suitable answer, but. It doesn't feel imminent, but it feels possible maybe that he moves. I don't know.
You can tell me if I'm crazy. We are seeing the Arvell Reese thing take off.
The Renaissance.
Sonny
The
Styles
Renaissance.
Sonny Styles has had a improvement from week 1 to week 2, and you expect him to keep getting better as he gets into one spot. Cody Simon, Jim Knowles talked about Gabe Powers. We've heard people around here rave about Peyton Pierce. We're 2 weeks into the season. We're two seasons and 2 games into CJ Hicks' career. The defensive line, the defensive end depth next year is significantly different than it is right now. Mm-hmm. Does it not make sense to just say, or to try to get CJ on board with the idea of saying, we're going to move, we're starting this now, we've got a year, we'll get you 2 more games to play this year plus the playoff. You can still play 6 to 7 games this year, but we're just going to redshirt you and move.
Oof.
I wouldn't redshirt
I don't
him,
think so.
But I would make the move now and play him as much as he can handle. He doesn't have to play 25 defensive end snaps. Put him out there for 5 and try to ramp it up that way. And then next year, yes, he's a
because
bigger part of your
the
edge rotation.
argument from Ryan Day's perspective, we need him at linebacker.
I don't think
know if
they
that's
do.
true.
Yeah,
right
I
now.
disagree. I don't think they do.
I think that's the biggest frustration is that we all see how much athleticism CJ Hicks brings to Ohio State, and certainly he has passion for the program and a willingness to work and get better. But as it stands currently, because of the Renaissance, because of Gabe Powers,
You don't have to use that. It's pretty dumb.
dumb. Well, you said it, and it's already out there.
It's true.
I put
we're making
improv
sure it's-
conversation on today's podcast daily. That was the
Improv conversation.
yeah, like improving conversation. For improvement week, and then
I prefer Renaissance.
and Tuesday conversations is what I because talking Tuesday, I was trying to figure out a way to make Tuesday and Tuesday conversation and improving in one word. It wasn't great. It wasn't my best word.
Because of the situation at linebacker and the situation at defensive end, I think I just have to come to a point where there's nothing more that I can really say about CJ Hicks in terms of a role this year, unless they get wiped out by injury, which, knock on wood, you certainly don't want to see that happen for the Buckeyes. Like, they don't need it at linebacker, and they don't need it at defensive end. So we love CJ. We want the best for CJ. We see that there's a potential for him, and in virtually every other situation in the last 12 years, there probably would have been a more prominent role for him at this period of his career. But I just don't think that that's going to happen. So I know that there are people that are like tired of me or us talking about the jack or putting him on the edge, and that's fine
because he's not a true defensive end.
But I think he could be. Like when I asked about putting him on the line of scrimmage, I'm talking just making him a defensive
stand
end.
up.
I'm not talking about. I'm talking about doing
Micah
what Penn
Parsons.
State has done with Abdul Carter this year, what they should have done with Micah Parsons, what Ohio State should have done with Baron Browning 5 years ago. No gimmicky jack stuff. Just he's a defensive end.
Just a stand up defensive end.
Yeah.
But I just think, unless the picture changes at linebacker, or unless the situation at defensive end necessitates a move, like I don't know that it's going to accomplish anything for me to keep talking about CJ Hicks on this team. And I do think that is true, that over the course of the year, there's going to be spots for him to play at linebacker. That is probably where there is a more pressing use for him as a security blanket and as a reserve option and a rotational player than there is on the defensive line. The conversation that we had throughout training camp and before that was like, well, are they really maximizing the personnel? Can they go from 98% efficiency to 100 by moving CJ Hicks there? And I would still listen to an argument that could make Ohio State even more deadly and dangerous, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. And so I'm going to have to probably, like, for my own sanity, put a pin in that conversation and focus on the guys where Ohio State's clearly building around. And at this point, it doesn't appear like that's going to be CJ Hicks.
No, I don't think so either. It's just, I think you're probably right to just stick a pin in it. This has happened before. It sucks to see it happen again. That guy has skills and ways that he can help 100%. His defense, and they're not letting him do it. And he has to want to do it too. That's the other piece.
That's what I'm saying. The conversation has to happen. It has to be a two-way conversation.
Sure, absolutely.
And if you begin that conversation, then I think that there is a reasonable case to say you're going to play 6 or 7 games this year, but we're going to focus on next year for you. And
he played 12 snaps against Western Michigan, and only because the game was out of hand. He played 7 snaps in the first half. Do you want to play 7 snaps as a backup linebacker, or do you want to play 7 snaps on the line of scrimmage where you let you go rip the quarterback's head off?
That's what I'm saying.
That, to me, is a pretty easy conversation. But I don't know if they're going to have it.
Doesn't seem like they are. That's
probably not.
So it doesn't need to be like improvement week. And when you have 2 games of film to evaluate, I think now is the time where we ask the question, we get their thoughts on it, and because now they would be able to adjust and make that plan and present that, and you have something to build off of, a platform. And say, well, this is where it is, and this you can see what Arvell Reese is doing, and compare that, and this is the way moving forward. But if they get past this week and they don't adjust, then
then we have to let it go.
Yeah,
that's fine. Yeah, that's fair.
Sorry, America,
and we will.
We will let it go after that,
because that's improvement for our own sake.
Yeah, we can
get better.
We can't. Oh yeah. At a certain point, we should probably stop talking about the same thing when the results don't change, right?
Yeah, because there's plenty of other things about this team that are a lot more fun to talk about
100%.
at this point, including Seth McLaughlin.
I think he's awesome. His play has been very good. I think he's very clean as an offensive lineman, but I also think it's quite obvious the impact that he has on the offense as a whole. And Ryan Day, I think it's not the first time he said this, but he said on Tuesday that Seth has a calming presence about him that you can really get after him, and he responds in a very mature way because he is an adult who has played a lot of football. And if you get chewed out by Nick Saban, you can probably get chewed out by anybody. So, but I think it's been tremendously helpful for this group, and it's not. I don't even mean it as a comparison necessarily to what they had last year. Carson Hinsman, who we've said repeatedly was in a really tough spot as a young guy, but when you have that kind of experience, the scars I think that Seth McLaughlin brings with him at that particular position, it just really settles the rest of it down. There is a world where the interior of Ohio State's offensive line could have been a real disaster through these first couple of games when you're playing a third-year right guard who's starting for the first time in a true sophomore, or I guess a redshirt freshman left guard who had never played prior to this year. But I think the reason that Tegra Shabola and Austin Sareveld have taken to this so well so early is because Seth McLaughlin is in the middle, telling them where to go, telling them what they're seeing, and kind of getting their eyes and their minds right play to play. And it's been pretty impactful, I think. And obviously they're going to need it when they play tougher tests and more harsh environments.
All right, because he's also, like, aside from being a calming presence, he's also been a really good football player.
Yeah.
If you are a regular Twitter user or whatever, there's a number of people who post video clips of Ohio State's games, and the last 3 days have just been inundated with Seth McLaughlin clips and how
His block on Quinshon's second touchdown was crazy.
Getting up, blocking two guys, getting to the next level, stuff that was just not happening a year ago. And once you start to see, oh, okay, that's how that's supposed to look, then all of a sudden everyone else picks it up, and it's been pretty big. I think one of, Ryan Day, he must have watched Talking Stuff a week ago because he brought up.
He always does.
I'm not sure that he always does, but he must have, or somebody else may have, and he brought up the fact that, there are a handful of transfers that came in that had a big impact that will have a big impact on this team, but this team is built on the backs of the Ohio State football roster, especially the class of 2021. So when you have just these little pieces that get thrown in, the Caleb Downs, the Seth McLaughlins, the Quinshon Judkins, even probably to a lesser degree because Travion probably could handle this by himself. If he stays healthy, we've never really, we see what he can do. Will Howard, like, this team is, to use a Tim Mayism, this team is loaded for bear.
That could have gone anywhere.
Wow.
Okay, so to speak. This team is loaded for bear.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard
Tim
anyone,
May, famously the only person ever.
I've never heard anyone else say that.
What?
Who else says that?
Literally everyone.
I've never said it until today.
Huh.
So I'm giving the credit to Tim May
Okay.
because he's the first person I've ever heard use it in a sentence over and over, which is what got it in my craw.
In your craw, another Tim Mayism.
I've heard a lot of people say craw.
Okay. Well, so you're using a lot of fairly generic statements.
Yeah. Oh, here's a generic statement. The kick return game might get some second looks this week.
It should. I don't.
According to Ryan Day.
As seriously and intently as Ryan Day is taking the reconfiguration of the coaching staff of the special teams, the personnel must be included as well. So Ohio State is going to look at that after Jaden Ballard botched a kickoff return on Saturday, put Ohio State in a bad way, and then nearly muffed a punt later on in the game. So they gave him credit for the offseason, said he was a gold performer and earned the opportunity to take those reps in the first 2 weeks of the season. But to be quite honest, when Ryan Day says we're going to reevaluate something, that thing has already happened. Like that's the die has been cast.
There were a lot of platitudes before the but.
Yeah.
That answer, which is like, okay, we got what we need. I don't think we'll see that the rest of the year.
I wonder if Brandon Ennis should do both.
Yes.
Why not? Yeah, I think you could.
I just think you're at a point with this team where if there's even a chance of a small thing being wrong that could cost you in an important game, you just can't continue it.
Yeah.
And
that's why I talked about special teams so much for the last 2 years. Like it's bonkers that you would waste those opportunities.
Yeah, like I on Saturday at the game, like I was 30 seconds late out to the field in the start of the second half, and I walk out and the Buckeyes are at the 6. I'm like, how the hell did that happen? And no one can tell me what happened.
That's how I learned that you can't call a fair catch and let the ball bounce, because I didn't know that was a rule.
Unless it's in the end zone.
He also did it the week before, and he let a live ball. Fortunately, I don't think anybody noticed this or paid any attention to it. The ball nearly stopped, like on the 2, and just happened to trickle over into the end zone, and he just let it roll. And I was like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah, you can let it bounce if it's in the end zone. If it's out of the end zone, it's in the landing zone.
Yeah. The week before, it almost didn't get to the end zone.
Yeah, so I mean, it's obviously, but this may be an issue. Maybe, I don't know. There's a lot of rules changing. There's a lot of coaches who are handling special teams now as a unit. Maybe there were some rules that didn't get passed along. I don't know. It just seems like a weird problem for somebody it seems like a weird decision to let the ball bounce on a kickoff. Ever. That's kind of rule number 1 of the kickoff. Don't let it bounce.
Even a week ago at this time, what was the first thing that Ryan Day said? He was upset that they didn't take the first kickoff of the year back for a touchdown because he thought that the opportunity was right there for it. So this, strike 1, strike 2, you're out. That seems like
That's right.
That's how the rules work, right?
That's a lot of rules have changed over the years. But yes, now 2 strikes is a strikeout.
2 strikes is a strikeout.
There's one other thing. Ryan Day twice, without being asked about him specifically, said that Donovan Jackson is coming back. Yeah. So, I think we probably all assumed that Donovan Jackson will probably play against Marshall in 2 weeks, but Ryan Day basically confirmed it.
The question will be how much?
Yeah.
Probably needs to start playing, right?
That's a noon game.
Going on the road against
early.
a Big Ten opponent the week after that. So
yeah.
Plus, Marshall was 1-0 against Notre Dame in the last 3 years. So
is that right?
Yeah.
They're 0-1 against Virginia Tech in the last 4 days. But other than that,
to be
fair, they haven't been given a chance to play them again. So
the only re-ranking I care about is if Notre Dame has been kicked out of the North.
hey,
but I considered it.
I wanted to ask you this question.
Yeah.
And I might as well just do it while we're
I'm here.
recording the show.
I'm here with a live mic. I'm here.
Sure. Snap judgments. I know you're focused exclusively now on Northern ball, but have you watched Alabama's current center and Jalen Milroe? Are there still snap issues in Tuscaloosa?
I haven't. I saw something on Twitter that there was at least one in their first game, but otherwise I couldn't tell you.
Because I think one of the conversations in the offseason, going back to Seth McLaughlin, was, you can't snap. But there was a lot of people who said that the issue was due to Jalen Milroe.
Yeah.
And cadence issues.
Mm-hmm. And I was also told that there was a wrist injury that Seth McLaughlin was playing through last year. So maybe a combination of multiple factors.
Because he's been fine so far at Ohio State. Let's be pretty clear. He's been more than good. So I don't know. Just sometimes you need a little luck, You going
to attribute this to Jim Knowles?
Yeah.
He's the only one who's ever done that.
Well, he did it first. I just saw him do it, so then I did it.
Well, we're learning. It's improvement week. Sorry, I guess, for one of the stranger snap judgments we've had, but
what are you going to do?
It's not a game. We're not focused. We need to get it back together. We will later on at Roosters for the live show, and then we'll be back in here tomorrow morning, I promise you, for a little Woody Wednesday on the Podcast Daily. But thanks for joining us for Snap Judgments. That's Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. We'll see you later.